Welcome back to the People's Success Circle. Today we have an absolute trailblazer joining us, Eileen Collins. She has made history as the first female pilot and commander of a space shuttle, leading groundbreaking missions for NASA. She is a true leader in aviation and space exploration, and Eileen's journey is filled with resilience, excellence, and inspiring firsts. We will be diving into her experiences, her leadership lessons, and what it takes to break barriers in any field. Now let's get started. One of the first people who greeted me when I moved into my neighborhood in San Antonio was you. And it was so great to meet you in the neighborhood. And we actually share similar street addresses. So our mail gets mixed up. I moved to San Antonio, and before I know it, I am meeting Eileen Collins in the street exchanging mail.
Yeah, sometimes little things in life that are very annoying might lead to something really great. So
it has led to something great. I mean, we love the neighborhood and we love just having such great neighbors and have been able to become friends. And so when I said I have a new podcast, you were so gracious to give of your time.
Thanks for listening to my message also. I'm happy to share it. I joined the Air Force, way back when I was 19 years old, the beginning of my career. I was in Air Force ROTC. I had the great opportunity to be part of a test program that the Air Force ran. Really, the mission of that test program was, can women fly military aircraft? That program went on, I think, for about 4 years, and I came in the middle of it. And I was in the first class of women to go through pilot training at my base in Oklahoma. And there were 4 women. We all started pilot training at the same time on a base with 500 other pilots who were all men. It was really baptism by fire. But I'm going to tell you, I so enjoyed it. Just the fact that I was able to fly airplanes, I was so happy. For the 4 of us women, we knew that how we did was not only going to affect our career, but it was going to affect all these other women that were going to follow us in, decades and decades. And there's a lot of pressure there. So, the mission I set for myself was just to be the best pilot I could be. So I think that's probably, the one thing I want to say, as I went on to become an Air Force test pilot and an astronaut, which was another dream of mine, was to become an astronaut someday. And that doesn't always happen to everyone. Sometimes circumstances work out that for the dream job, like maybe you want to win an Olympic gold medal. I think living your life and trying your best and having goals to shoot for is really important because it helps us live a happy life.
What would you say sparked your interest in aviation? I know that from reading your book that it was sparked at a very early age. So tell me about what sparked that interest in aviation.
My family did not have the money to get me flying lessons because flying lessons are very expensive. But I became interested in aviation through reading books. When I was a kid, my mom took the 4 of us kids to the library, and I found the section on aviation. I might have been in middle school, somewhere in that time frame. And I found these books that were written by authors who in many cases were pilots themselves. They had dramatic titles. Fate is the Hunter by Ernest Gahn. The Stars at Noon. I go, man, I got to read this book, The Stars at Noon. There's actually 2 books by that name. So you want to look for the one by Jackie Cochran. And she was the woman who started the Women Air Force Service Pilots of World War II. She grew up severe poverty in the Deep South. I say Deep South, but I think she was an orphan for a while. She started a makeup business, which became very successful. She made a lot of money in that business, and she used that to go on and learn how to fly. When she started the Women Air Force Service Pilots, that was a very successful program during the war. After that, she became the first woman to go faster than the speed of sound. Probably like one of my role models when I was young. And so I think the answer is books. Now, I do want to say, I grew up near the National Soaring Museum in upstate New York, and I have a glider field there. So I was able to watch gliders fly in the, I would say when the weather was nice in upstate New York. And I always wondered what it would be like to be in one of those gliders. Also inspired me. And my dad is a World War II veteran. He went into the Navy. So I think there was a little bit there from my parents also.
And I loved when I read in your book about the fact that you were just such an avid reader, and that sparked a dream for you. You also talked about in your book that you went to community college and that you really support community college.
Right. So I elected to go to a community college. Well, first of all, it was close by and the tuition was much more reasonable. My mother was very sick at the time. My parents were separated. My dad lived 2 hours away. I felt like I needed to stay there and take care of my mom. Eventually, she did get better and I was able to transfer, but I finished my 2-year degree, Associate in Science at Corning Community College. Turns out that was the best thing that happened to me at that age. I was 17 when I graduated from high school. I was probably not mature enough to go away to college at that time. And I think I sort of knew that. And staying at home gave me the opportunity to not only take care of my mom, but I had a part-time job where I could make some money. It was just more personable.
Yeah, I think so too. And one of the things I do in my company is help early career professionals learn how to get hired. And I put just as much weight on somebody who has gone to community college as a 4-year college for sure. So Eileen, you were the first female pilot and commander of a NASA space shuttle, which is such an incredible milestone. What leadership skills helped you break through barriers in a male-dominated field?
Yeah, well, that was really a dream come true for me to have the opportunity to pilot the space shuttle. And although there were women mission specialists before me, they were my role models. They did spacewalks, they did science experiments. But as a pilot with the shuttle, we operated the shuttle systems and we flew the shuttle, and pilots had the opportunity to go on to be commanders. I was able to fly twice as a pilot and twice as commander. Your question was on the leadership skills. I really think that you could go on and on forever. There are so many variables that go into what is a great leader. But just to keep it very basic, I think that the first and most important thing in a leader is that you know your job. You know the mission of the organization that you're with. You have a skill that organization needs and you're knowledgeable. So I would say knowledge in a particular career field. So for me, being the shuttle commander, I need to understand how that shuttle works. So I think knowledge is the number one thing in a leader. You don't have to know everything, but you have to be in depth in at least something. The second thing is communicating. So if you never talk to the people that you work with, it's going to be hard for you to move on as a leader, understand the situation, know what they do. Maybe they have problems at home. You can't be 100% fair leader, but you should at least try to be fair. But the key thing is communicating. The third and final thing that I'll say that I always, when I talk about leadership, is integrity. And that's extremely important. Integrity in a leader is, we always think integrity is being honest. But there's also a trust factor that you want to trust, that people want to trust that you will be honest with them in the future. So it's really honesty and trust that's so important in a leader. Is you communicate and try to be fair as much as you reasonably can, but I will try my best. I would say knowledge, communicating, and integrity are the three essential things in a leader. But now you could go on and say things like, well, the leader has to be passionate about what they're doing. Yes. Leader has to encourage creativity. A leader has to be a good listener. But, those are all like extra things. You've got to go back to those three things. Know your job, communicating, and be a person of integrity.
I love how you boiled it down that way. You obviously lead as a commander well before you had go into space, right? You have your team and you've been working together on land for a long time. Can you tell me about how leadership differs for you in maybe on land versus in space in a high stress, close quarter environment?
Before a mission, it's mostly planning and making tough decisions because you can't satisfy everybody. As a leader, people are coming after me in different directions. I want this, I want that. There's not money for everything. We don't have time for everything. And, frankly, I would tell my crew and the people I was working with, if you have a problem, come to me and I'll help you resolve it. Mostly like resolving problems in the planning stage. Now we move to the actual mission itself. Now we're talking, of course, life or death, like open the wrong valve or maybe turn the wrong screw in the wrong direction. Something really bad could happen. As astronauts, we don't want to make mistakes. So I would say the same attitude in space is everything normally goes pretty smooth until something unexpected happens. And that would be part that would answer your question. What do I do different in space? It would be only if something unexpected happens. And usually something unexpected does happen. Am I going to fix that thing? Am I going to take some resources away from one of the experiments or events that we're doing and use it for something else? Those decisions, normally I would ask my crew. We don't have a lot of time. We can't wait for a meeting tomorrow. We got to do this right now. So what is your input? And then I would get my crew's input, and then I would call mission control, because there's people down there that have information that we don't have. So I would say it's still collaborative. And the last thing I would say about that, if it's an emergency, let's say we had a fire, smoke, maybe a piece of debris hits the window and we start having an air leak, cooling system springs a leak, those would be emergencies. There's no time to talk. And that's when we fall back to our training. So all of these types of emergencies are in the flight rules and they're in the procedures. We train them. We know them. It's like, hey, everybody, we need to get on this procedure, loss of cooling. Everybody just jump in and do your part, isolate the cooling, stop the leak, isolate the cooling, protect the equipment. And if we need to come home, we'll have one of our crew members figure out where we're going to land. And you've got to maintain a level head. You cannot panic in these situations. And this goes back to the kind of people that we pick to be astronauts, the kind of people who aren't prone to panicking. How do you know that? Well, if you're in a flying world, normally you've learned how to handle your emotions in a emergency situation. And I would say the other thing is just, when I say don't panic, is stay focused. Don't worry about this thing could burn up or this thing could crash. Just stay focused and right up to the very end doing your job, right up until you either stop the fire or stop the leak or get the shuttle or the spacecraft deorbited and back to a safe landing. And that all goes back to your training and discipline. I would say training, discipline, and staying focused. That's kind of a long answer. What would I do different up in space? Yep, it all goes back to training and practice and being ready for emergencies.
You talked a lot about letting people do their job, and because trained to do their job and to be the leader who comes, that you're there if they need you, but trust, it sounds like you have trust in them because you've all been trained so well. And so a lot of being a good leader is empowering your team to do what they know how to do so well.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know where people are. So if I have a rookie on my flight, let's see, of someone who has not been in space, I'm going to spend more time helping that person. But if I have an experienced crew member who's flown 2 or 3 times, I use an example of Wendy Lawrence, who was one of the crew members on my last mission. I asked her to run I call it the logistics exchange. We took up 5,000 pounds of stuff to take to the space station, and she was in charge of making all that happen. Wendy is a very experienced, smart, effective person. So I just said, Wendy, you got it. I'm going to stay out of whatever it is that you are doing. But if you have a problem, come to me. And she took off and did a great job. And occasionally she'd come to me with, questions or conflicts, decisions, concerns, and we'd work that out together. But for the most part, I did not micromanage her. And some people tend to micromanage. I think people that do that are a little bit insecure. So I'm going to say I used to be a micromanager. And I don't know why I did that. I mean, way back when I was younger.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm guilty.
I'm guilty. I'm 100%. And people would push back on me. So I would shift my energy. Once I became a shuttle commander, I think I had learned better, spend more time with the new guys and gals on my flight. And those who are experienced, I just, hey, report back to me every once in a while. So, we're all on the same page, but I wouldn't micromanage them.
I would love to hear more about your first experience in aviation as one of the first females for the military, how that felt. You one of 4 women and 500 men, and how that experience shaped you as a leader.
Oh, there's so much I could talk about that. We had a wing commander at one point so he liked having the women, and he thought he would use that to maybe help his career, kind of roll the women out like, hey, we're going to send you down to the local radio and TV stations, and we're going to let them interview you. And Eileen, I want you to be the first woman to fly in an F-15. So he got me an F-15 flight, which was the hot jet fighter at the time. And I was just a second lieutenant. And the first lieutenants and the captains, instructors that I worked with who were senior to me, they had been waiting for years to get the F-15 flight, but I was put in line ahead of them because I was the token woman. The guys didn't appreciate that. I had to kind of deal with that. I wanted to be accepted by my peers as being a good pilot, but I didn't want to be the token woman in the squadron. I talked more about in my book how I dealt with that. I talked to some of the guys I worked with and they said, Eileen, don't worry. We know it's not about you. And I did go off and fly that mission and find out that I was not the first woman to fly in an F-15. There was someone else who flew before me. So I think part of that was I was getting some good deals because I was a woman and I really didn't want the good deals. I wanted to just blend in. And there also were times when you did not get the good deal. Probably the biggest example of that was back in those days, women were not allowed to fly fighters operationally as an assignment. Whereas I could get a one-time good deal ride, I couldn't actually go fly that airplane operationally. And women were barred by law from that. There were pluses and minuses to being like the only woman in the squadron. And by the way, I'm talking about the time when I was an instructor, because you had mentioned there were 4 of us. Yes, there were 4 of us that went through pilot training, and I was the only one that was brought back as an instructor. The other three, well, one of them didn't make it through training at all because it's very hard to get through training. And the other 2 went off to do other assignments in a different location. So I stayed there for 3 years at my base in Oklahoma. I was the only woman instructor in my squadron for 3 years. And it was, everybody knew who I was. If I made a mistake in the airplane, they all knew the woman did it. Like just because I made a mistake doesn't mean every other woman is going to make a mistake. I would say when I look at women pilots over my entire career of, 40 plus years of flying, the women fly just like the men. There is not a difference. The difference in pilots is with their experience level. And I think there's also some innate things like your vision. You have to have very excellent vision as a pilot. You have to have very good hearing. You have to have very good health. Those things are going on, but there really is not a difference in men and women in the cockpit flying. Is some women say the plane doesn't know if you're a man or a woman. I'm not going to say women are better pilots than men. I'm going to say women and men, on the average, fly the same. So I'm a member of Women in Aviation, women military aviators, and I really try to promote to young women that are thinking of becoming pilots. It is a great career. You get to travel. It really helps your confidence. You learned how to handle emergencies in an airplane, and that transfers to your life. You can be better able to handle emergencies as they come along, or malfunctions, or maybe your kid gets sick. I think that I'm better able to handle things in everyday life because of the time I've spent as a pilot. So I got way off question there, but
no, that's okay. I think that my husband was an electronic warfare officer in the military Marines, and so he does have his wings, although he wasn't the actual pilot. And I think as you were talking, I was thinking about Andy and his problem-solving skills as well. Like, he's just very calm all the time. Nothing rattles him. And yes, he also has those great problem-solving skills. It was interesting to hear you tell me that. What did you have to believe about yourself as a woman? Like, what belief did you hold that got you through being in an environment where you were?
I still fight this today. At my age, with all the experience I've had as a military pilot, an aircraft commander, space shuttle pilot and commander, I still have doubts about myself when I am faced with something that I haven't done before. I'm like, shoot, can I do that? Do I have those skills? What mistakes am I going to make? What am I going to run into that there's that. I am sorry, but that is human nature. And
yeah,
it's human nature to have those kind of doubts about yourself. One really interesting thing that happened to me recently, I was out speaking and a young woman she's probably in her 20s asked me, do you have any doubts about yourself? And I'm like, yeah, all the time. I just did it right out. I still do.
When I think about how resilient you had to be in being one of the first women to fly, to be part of the military, and to be part of commanding a space shuttle, I feel like there's probably some beliefs that you have to tell yourself, like believe in yourself. But there was something about you that gave you the confidence.
A person must have a high energy level to keep going. And that's both physical and mental, because there will be failure and mistakes along the way. So having the mental energy you have to absorb failure. You have to absorb it. You have to deal with your mistake, absorb that failure, but you got to keep coming back. So there's a mental energy that you have to have. And there's also a physical energy that you have to, to get out of bed in the morning and to, go and do your job and do it right. I really try take care of myself physically, eat right, sleep right. Don't take a lot of drugs or medicine or drink alcohol or smoke or, try not to rely too much on, I want to say outside things like I know people that drink, the alcohol kind of helps them get through things. We know how to do that. I'm not going to go through that now. You know how to eat right. You know how to sleep right. Try to stay on a good sleep schedule as much as you can and take care of yourself. And that's a message I tell kids in school. I try to be kind of procedural, and that helps me bounce back. And I say procedural, meaning staying on a schedule, getting up on time. Okay, I have these things on my schedule today. I'm going to do my best to get them done, even if I don't feel like it. I also go to the gym a lot because I need to, I'd say, keep working out to keep myself at a high energy level.
Yeah, to be mentally and physically prepared, for sure. What role have mentors played?
Did I have a mentor? So I would say my parents, my best mentors, both of them had issues. Dad was an alcoholic. My mother had lots of problems. But one thing I'm going to say about my parents is they would talk to me, and they would talk to me about their problems. They didn't hide it. Now, when I went into the Air Force, I didn't actually have a mentor that helped me through my career. There were no women pilots that were senior to me other than a couple of years. So we didn't have women in leadership positions that were able to, help mentor. So that didn't exist. But I will say the men that I worked for, I think most of them were absolutely fantastic, beginning with the colonel that ran our ROTC detachment. When I failed my eye test, he called me in, had a long talk, said, you know what, I'm going to send you back and let you take that eye test again. And he told me, rest your eyes, take care of yourself. I think you're very close to passing it. And so although he wasn't a traditional mentor, he was a person that cared and gave me a chance. And I had people throughout my Air Force career that gave me second chances. And I made some dumb mistakes in the airplane, and they would call me in and basically chew me out. They'd say, go back. I think you learned something. I think you ought to go back to the flight line and get back to doing your job and share your experience. And so I think although that wasn't traditional mentoring, I think just having them care and give me second chances was one of the best. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. I think that the men that I worked for throughout the Air Force, they were great.
I love to hear that. Now, how did you balance motherhood?
Because I love being a mother. My kids are in their 20s now, but I love being a mother, and I love being an astronaut and a pilot. And I think because I really had a passion for both of those, I was able to do it because I loved it. I had the energy to do it.
Right.
But I also had help. So certainly I'm going to say mother, but also as a parent, because it applies to fathers also, we had help. So we had a nanny who was great. I told my nanny stories in the book because the first nanny we had did not work out, and we had some struggles there. That we hired was fantastic. We had her for 13 years. So sometimes it can be scary hiring a nanny, but pretty much had to do that because my job went outside of normal, typical work hours, and I couldn't really just have my kids in daycare. And honestly, being a mom made me a better pilot, and it made me a better astronaut. Before my kids were born, I would work my job 24/7. I was going in on weekends. I was bringing my job home with me. But once I had my daughter, I'm not bringing my work home with me anymore. I would spend time with her. And we'd read books, we'd go for walks, we'd go to the park, we hey, let's go to the grocery store. And, I just kind of played with them. And that, I think that made me a better astronaut because I wasn't as fatigued from my job. I started relying more on other people to do the work instead of doing it all myself. And one time somebody asked me, what makes a good shuttle commander? And I said, the best training to be a shuttle commander is to be a parent.
Interesting. I love that.
You have to know how to say no, and you have to know how to have, some kind of structure in your family. You have to have a schedule. You have to have structure. You can't let your kids run wild because it'll drive you crazy. Same philosophy applies in the office.
And you know what? I honestly have to tell you that inspired me to hear you say that it made you a better mom, because sometimes I am guilty of working too much or, not being as focused on the family sometimes as I can be some at work. And so it's inspiring for me to hear you say how you figured out how to balance it, because it made you truly better in your day job. So throughout your career, you have had to continuously learn and adapt. How do you approach lifelong learning and stay ahead in a rapidly changing world?
Yeah, I'm a big reader. Unfortunately, I will admit I'm distracted by my phone. I mean, I got
Yes.
people texting me and the news is coming in and I just get distracted by my phone. But I try to carve out time to read.
Mm,
At this point in my life, I read a lot of history. It's just amazing how human nature has not changed over the
yeah.
history of the world. And so I like to read history and I kind of study how they did things. Not that I'm going to be like them, but or that I even want to be like them. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But learning about how other people are leaders, it really helped me then and still helps me now when I interact with people. I don't try to put them in buckets like, oh, you're like that guy or you're this kind of person, but it helps me understand human nature. I also do puzzles. I want to say challenging puzzles. We can say crosswords, but I do, cryptograms and, different types of, puzzles that you find either on paper or on the screen. Keep me thinking to keep me sharp, right? I'm into artificial intelligence. People rely on it too much, which might affect our ability to be good decision makers ourselves. And one of the things I talk about is don't let the artificial intelligence always make the decision for you. If it's a routine decision, that might be okay, but you need to have a human in there, especially if it's a unique thing that you have to make.
It is, and it's really changed so much even in the last year or two since it's come out. I mean, and it changes fast. Just the speed of change that it can implement, contribute to is huge. If you could leave our listeners with one key takeaway on leadership, success, or even resilience, what would that be?
Wow, one key takeaway. Honestly, this is going to sound so old, but believe in yourself. I mean, it sounds so old and you've heard it so many times, but it's so true. Believe in yourself and have confidence in yourself. And also behind believing yourself is continue to learn. It doesn't matter how old you always are learning. And really, to believe in yourself, you have to take care of yourself.
That's so wise. It's so wise. I love that. So you've achieved so much in your career. What's next for you, or what continues to inspire you?
Yeah, what's next for me? Well, right now I'm a professional speaker and that keeps me very busy. I try to not take on too much because I want to be the things that I want to do well. And so I really focus on that. And I think the second part of the answer is you mentioned earlier, I wrote a book. Actually, I brought it with me. I can show it to you. But a filmmaker read my book and he really liked it. The book is Through the Glass Ceiling to the Stars. His name is Keith Haviland and he's a film producer. So he actually made a documentary on my book and it's called Space Woman. And right now, Space Woman is in the film festival circuit. I mean, it would be wonderful if it went to Netflix, but it's really hard to get on Netflix. But I think the film will be great for young people to see what it's like to become an astronaut and to be an astronaut. And there's also a little twist in the film on the family side, being a mom and, being a wife and mother and trying to do all that while flying in space. They really focused on that. Hopefully you'll get a chance to see the film someday. It's not out there right now, but it will be.
I think it is a fantastic story of courage and determination. And you have just had such a career that you should be so proud of. I love to hear that you're out there speaking because you have such a great message to share.
Thank you. Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk to your audience. And I wish your audience the best in all that you're doing. Also, Mindy, I think what you're doing is great in helping people with whatever they have going on in their life and their career and having somebody, to really, I mean, it's hard.
It's hard.
It's really hard to be out there and it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's still hard. And it's nice to know that other people are going through the same thing that you're going through and to be able to listen to ideas and how other people solve the problems. So thanks for what you do also for everybody.
Thank you. I find great joy in guiding people through the people side of the business, whether that's a company that I'm guiding them on leading and creating HR processes, or whether it's a job seeker who's struggling and doesn't know the next step. I love to guide people through it. So thank you so much for your time. I just really, really enjoyed it.